right?
Yeah.
But I also, this is one of the things I love about your book too. You don't hold back when it comes to dishing out some of the challenges that Agile as a hyped movement potentially faces. You care to elaborate where you think the state of Agile is and
Well, I think we could talk for hours on this note, on this thing, but if you go to the Agile conferences, they tend to focus on improving teams. And one of the things that we've always said is, doesn't matter how great your teams are if you're working in a dysfunctional organization.
yeah.
So you kind of touched on top-down control and such. We found needs to be successful is you need to make all aspects of the organization agile. That includes things like finance areas, HR areas, and that's built into our framework. You got to fix the organization before you try to optimize teams, or you're just going to be beating your head against a wall.
Yeah. And that's a hard problem. And I think one of the reasons why most of the Agile community, avoided that, because it's a really hard problem and you've got to know your stuff. Whereas just focusing on a team is a heck of a lot easier. And so I can see the attraction of that, but it hasn't worked out well. And frankly, the state of Agile right now is a mess. The big frameworks have crashed and burned. Organizations are not happy. They've made huge investments over the years in certifying their people and training and transformations. Most big organizations have had multiple rounds of Agile transformations, all of which failed. Even the last successful round was questionable at best. But now they're just, they're either lying, or they've given up, or they've lied to themselves just to move on.
Well, they kind of overpromised and underdelivered, which was actually anybody who's dealt with any methodology beforehand. It's kind of a reoccurring pattern. We overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah, and a lot of it too, like to get back to your earlier points about how people want predictability. They want to know the budget up front. They want to know the schedule up front. And that never works, but they still want something. And so you got to have reasonable stories to tell. But one of the things that we baked right into DA was coherent governance, right? Because you are going to get governed. Like our message was always, you are being governed, like it or not. Like regardless
of the sponsor exists no matter how much you redefine your roles. Yeah.
Yeah. You're being governed, but you deserve to be governed well. And that's typically where governance starts to fall apart for most organizations, right? They've got these governance people that, they're pushing paper and they're holding reviews. And they want to see certain artifacts. And they want to see all these promised dates and promised numbers. And what do the teams do, right? They fake the numbers. And there's practice, even in like traditional project management, there's practices in order to produce numbers to make it, all the earned value management stuff. The best thing I can say about it is, as soon as I hear that you're doing it, I know exactly what your problems are, and it can help you from there if I can get past the religion, all the religious stuff around that. But they want reporting. Like, you have to be fair, right? They want visibility, and particularly in predictive, predictive is the most offensive word, I think, in the methodology space, because it's not predictable, right? Or if you want to predict, they're going to be late and over budget. Okay, fine, it's very predictable.
I might contend with you what that's concerned, because I'm a big fan of hybrid in reality. I've never done any project where I didn't use agile methodology, but I've never done an agile project where I didn't use predictive. I think it's the paradox of project management, and you refer to it in many of your cultural foundational concepts that you talk about, is paradox means there's two facts that seem to contradict one another but still coexist. I've used this quote a million times, the classical quote, failing to plan equals planning to fail, right? Everybody loves that one. And then I said there's a great philosopher, Mike Tyson, who once said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Now, a lot of people say, Mike knows what he's talking about, so screw planning. And I'm like, no, you completely missed the point, because Mike spent 4 months in a training camp preparing in great detail on how to fight his match. But he's not so so unwise to think that when he goes out there, it's going to happen exactly like he planned. And I think this is where, this is what's confusing. It's not a simple philosophy. And I think that's what's so great about your hybrid approach in your book is that you address this. We're going to get into what actually, so for the people who are going to ask the silly question, what the heck is discipline? Well, I want to get there, but before we do, there's two things I wanted to point out. Mark, you alluded to I think if you would translate to one of the things you said, we could go back to the Peter Drucker quote, right? Culture eats process for breakfast, right? And you know what? I don't think we do ourselves enough of a service to really be blunt about the basic flaws of any form of project management. And that is, and you mentioned it, and it kind of reminds me of Six Sigma. Six Sigma had that kind of principle. You know, it's going to cost you at least $1 million to implement. You need to train on all levels of the organization, right? If you don't do horizontally and vertically, you can forget it. And this is what I often say. I wish we would stop BSing ourselves and saying, listen, until the C level, okay, stops using words like agile, inflationary, and get excuse me if I say it, get a hard on over it. Like 100% of the executives I talk to will, if you say, well, how do we do it? They go, we need to do that agilely. And I'm like, that's great. And then if you ask those people who use the word agile, do they know a single agile methodology? Do they know what doing, and we'll talk about the doing versus, because you have a very distinct statement on that. If you don't know how to do it, you can't be it. But doing it doesn't mean you are it. That's kind of another paradox that comes up. And by the way, it's funny that's serendipitous that you use the word religious, because I had a play on words. Your system is called Disciplined Agile, and not too far away from the spelling is disciples. Discipled is another word that you can almost fit in there, because ultimately, any system of working together means that everybody who's on the playing field knows the rules. There's some ground rules that we adhere to, and you can't expect any form of management to work unless it's integrated vertically, and also partly horizontally. So sorry, you guys got me on my soapbox there, but yeah.
Well, I think what you might be alluding to is the investment in knowledge. I mean, you talked about team and team training. It's one of the things that made us different, pre-PMI, is that when we went into an organization, we have customers like Papa John's as an example, Panera Bread, that we turned upside down to make them more agile. And one of the first things we said is, we're going to train every team member. And I got pushback on that usually, well, we can't afford that. Can we just train?
They thought you were trying to just milk the cow, right?
Yeah, like, why the entire team? They're busy. Why not just put all the leaders in a room and teach them Scrum, and then that. Right. I said, oh.
But no, leaders only need 15 minutes of training. Middle managers need a day of training. The staff needs 3 days of training. I'm like, screw you. This is,
It's complicated, and that's just the way. That's just we have to admit that. And like the Scrum guide, last time I checked, was 16 pages, 16, right? And if you take out the acknowledgments and the table of contents, it's more like 12. And so how can you possibly understand ways of working with that kind of investment? So no, we teach people what's in the toolkit, which is thousands of practices. Now you don't have to memorize them.
And I've hardly seen a system that goes in such depth as Disciplined Agile.
We teach people where to find answers to their problems. Identify what your goal is. What is your problem? And you can very easily.
We're getting ahead of ourselves, though. Once again, I have to channel the DAOs that are watching. If it's okay, I know you guys are chomping at the bit to talk about your baby, and that's why I'm so happy.